As the violent civil war in Syria continues into its 6th year, the situation for Syrian refugees remains dire. The crisis has unfolded to become a large-scale civil war affecting more than 12 million people across the region, including 5.6 million children. In Lebanon, Syrian refugees face a myriad of sufferings as Lebanon struggles with the influx of almost 1.5 million refugees, with some 1.05 entering in 2015 alone as the war in Syria intensifies. Approximately half of the Syrian refugees are under the age of 18 and around 40% are under the age of 12. Many of the Syrian children, the nation's hope for a better future, are disorientated and detached from their surroundings. Their human rights have been neglected on a grand scale, with their rights to be protected from violence, abuse and neglect and live in dignity being disregarded. Such children need to be also supported to develop their full potential, which is also lacking due to many children not being educated, as their families struggle to feed them, let alone educate them. The conflict in Syria has taken both a physical and psychological toll on Syrian children, as they are weary from escaping the bloodshed. They have witnessed unspeakable horrors, which they struggle to forget. Bombs and missiles have destroyed their homes, communities and schools. Many friends and family members have been killed before their eyes, or have journeyed to many separate lands to escape the turmoil. The impact on these children is immense, with many suffering long-term from the trauma of the violence they have witnessed and experienced. Upon my visit to Lebanon, this was made very clear. The trauma of violence, homelessness and war is something that Syrian children will carry with them for the rest of their lives. These children do not suffer one trauma, rather a cascade of traumas, whereby they are exposed not only to war and danger, but seeing people killed and maimed, and being the victims of rape and robbery. Many children have lost the physical, emotional and social protection that is provided by family. No Syrian child has been left unscarred by the conflict their country is going through, as the war has engulfed every corner of the land. Exposure to such horrific events takes its toll, which can lead to long-term mental health issues. A recent study of Syrian refugees in Germany by the German Chamber of Psychotherapists found that among Syrian children, 40% had witnessed violence, 26% had watched family members being attacked, and 20% suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, referred to as PTSD. PTSD is a mental disorder that occurs in people who have experienced some form of traumatic event, such as warfare, which can last for many years after an event has finished. Symptoms may include having distressing thoughts and dreams, or feeling overly worried about the events they have witnessed. According to Dr. Henningsen, 1 in 5 Syrian refugee children suffer from some form of long-term psychological problems due to post-traumatic stress disorder. Long-term problems can include ongoing fear, paranoia, and anxiety that is exacerbated by traumatic recall of horrific memories that come flooding back and are triggered by sights, sounds, and even smell. Findings from another report by an associate professor in the Department of Applied Psychology at New York University indicate that a staggering 79% of the refugee children have experienced a death in the family, 60% have seen someone get kicked, shot at, or physically maimed, and 30% had themselves been kicked, shot at, or physically hurt. As a result of the unspeakable horrors that the children have witnessed, they now have trouble sleeping, have horrifying flashbacks, become bedwetters, and may even have speech and hearing problems. Almost half of the children interviewed in Lebanon displayed post-traumatic stress disorder, which is 10 times the global average. A mother of 5 speaks of how 3 of her children are now suffering from speech and hearing problems as an aftermath of what they witnessed back home in Syria. The hearing impediment is due to the damage caused by bombing. However, the mother stated that she felt they were too scared and did not want to talk or hear anything because they were worried that someone would try and take them away or hurt them if they made a sound. Choosing not to hear was to stop them hearing any bombs or shooting, a way of avoiding the memories of their past.
هلا نحن عندي 3 اولاد بالمدرسه، انا عندي البنت اللي عمرها هلا 13 سنه حاليا، هي بتشكي من ضعف سمعها بسبب الحرب اللي اثر عليهن كثير، وعندي اولاد 2 صموا بكم هلا حاطينهم بالمدرسه بس بلا شهادات بلا، لانه بدهم مدارس تاهيليه ونحن ما قادرين نحطهم بمدارس تاهيليه.
Additionally, Amina, mother of 5, feels that her children are suffering from PTSD even though they were very young when they were exposed to the war. Her now 9-year-old daughter was less than 4 when she would hear bombs exploding and be terrified. Her daughter was also scared for the first 2 months in Lebanon before she started to feel safer. However, she always watches the news and remembers everything, bringing back the memories of what she saw. Her behavior has changed, as what she saw in Syria, including lots of blood and dead bodies from the bombings, made her a much more serious young girl. Any noise that resembles a bomb scares her, even the sound of fireworks. Living in a tent also does not provide much security, which adds to the fear that she experiences.
ضلت شي 2-3 عن حالي، بعدين الحمد لله شوي بس بتفرجوا على التلفزيون بشوفوا بقولوا الله يعين سوريا. هلا بخافوا فعلا بالكرة. اي والله. شو بيعملوا لما يصعبوا؟ يعني ابرار بصير الساعة 12 بتقع كثير، بشوفيهم فوق وغفانين كثير.
As we approach the 6th-year anniversary of the civil war in Syria, almost 3 million Syrian children are out of school, putting them at risk of exploitation and threatening their futures. Since 2011, Syrian children have encountered various disruptions and barriers to receiving an adequate education. Education is often considered less urgent than other humanitarian services. However, a slow and silent assault on a child is committed each time their right to education is denied. In Lebanon, 78% of the Syrian refugees are out of school, according to UNHCR. Hatem, principal of Berja School in Lebanon, says that approximately half of the Syrian refugee children were not enrolled in school in mid-2015, causing the enrollment rates in Lebanon to be as low as 20%. Those who were enrolled, however, were more likely than their non-refugee peers to achieve poor or failing grades due to the substantial disruptions to their education. Besides this, there are also issues with language barriers and understanding a different and new curricula. According to UNICEF, this is destroying Syria's ability to achieve near-universal education. Failing to act urgently to ensure Syrian children access education in Lebanon may have a ruinous effect on an entire generation. There are a number of factors significantly impacting on both the quality and accessibility of education for Syrian refugee children in Lebanon, including, but not limited to, financial instability, poverty, trauma and psychological problems, and racial discrimination. For many of the families interviewed in Lebanon, financial hardship was the most imposing factor that determined whether or not children went to school. Ahmed, father of 3, says that he is only able to send his eldest to school as he only earns $10 to $20 a week and is not able to afford sending all of his children to school. Another father of 5 also only sends his eldest to school because he only earns $10 a day and education is not cheap in Lebanon. Many children are also expected to work to help their families afford food and shelter.
لا والله ما بروح ما سجلوا لي اياها مشان المصاري كان بس قالوا لي بدك تدفع وبدهم اوتوكار وما اوتوكار وانا مالي قدره يعني يوميتي كلها 20,000 ما توقف الزراعه يعني ادوب اعيشهم واجيب لهم حاجاتهم.
A 2014 UNICEF report on the impact of the Syrian conflict on children's lives estimated that 1 in 10 Syrian refugee children are made to work to help their families make ends meet. When the war started, Fatima and her family were living in Syria, but decided to move to Lebanon to get away from the fighting. Back in Syria, her eldest daughter was enrolled in school because they could afford to send her there. Although they moved for safety reasons, the move had come at a cost, the education of her children. Fatima said they could barely afford anything and that she and her husband decided to stop their daughter from going to school because they needed her to help out on the farm. Her daughter was very young and loved to go to school. Although Fatima had a job, she was hit by a car, causing her to stay in bed for over 4 months to recuperate. As Fatima was unable to work after the accident, her daughter took her place and worked instead to get a small amount of money to help the family survive. The daughter loved school, but surviving became a priority. In another Syrian family living in Lebanon, only the eldest out of 5 went to school due to the cost of enrollments, even though they moved to Lebanon in 2011, highlighting how even after nearly 6 years, Syrian families are barely making ends meet. Often, children who are not educated are more likely to feel marginalized and hopeless, making them vulnerable targets for radicalization. Once young people feel hopeless, they really do give up. They don't bother to take the step to build a better future. These children may grow up feeling like they have lost everything and cannot do anything to make things better for themselves. Education is the key to redeveloping Syria, but without educated citizens, the future looks bleak, as it might be a country filled with illiterate people who may also be suffering from PTSD, which is not a promising premise for rebuilding their nation. As the civil war rages on, Syrian citizens, in particular Syrian children, continue to suffer greatly. Syrian refugees live on the edge of society in makeshift housing that is not fit for anyone to live in, let alone young children, but it is better than being in a war-torn country where one's life is constantly at risk. Refugees are not readily accepted by Lebanese citizens who see them as being a burden to their country and taking from their own disadvantage. Many Syrian refugees are exploited in that they are not paid fair wages for their work and are expected to work long hours for a measly sum. Many Syrian families cannot afford to buy food for their families, let alone pay for their children's education. Therefore, a generation of young Syrians are growing up without an education for the future. Fear, on the other hand, is their constant companion as they worry about being attacked. Syrian refugee children's psyches are stained with the memories of bloodshed and other atrocities of war that they have had to see and experience firsthand. They face a broken future. Consequently, Syria is on the verge of losing a generation who are unable to rebuild their nation due to the lack of education and the mental anguish that they have suffered.